Eric Doyle. Hey, Eric. How you doing?
So I'm curious to know what Somerville's doing to keep housing costs down for people who are immigrants, as there's a lot of building and whatnot in the area. And my 4 years here, I've seen property values go up and rent go up, and it's nice to be a sanctuary for people from other places. But if they can't afford to live here, this can't be a sanctuary for them. And I
Thank you, Eric. We agree. We love the growth of the city, the things we hoped and planned for are actually happening, but if we lose our soul along the way, then to what end? Are we doing the things we plan to do? As a city and as a region, we need 435,000 units of housing. If we're gonna level off the market forces for rents, for home purchase. And you're right, those at the bottom end of the socioeconomic scale, they're the ones who are not gonna be able to be here. And what we promote is who we are, that multicultural strength, that diversity, the robustness of our neighborhoods, our squares, the 52 languages we speak. We love that. We don't want to lose that creativity, that originality. So as a city, we have a shared set of hopes and dreams to make sure we can meet that challenge. But I want to preface that by saying there's no way one city's going to do it alone. If we met all our goals to build all the housing units we say we're going to build, which is about several thousand more, at least 6, probably 9. We continue to pass important zoning reforms like 20% inclusionary. We continue to expand our housing programs for those who can't afford, even at the middle income range. If we don't, as a region, take a regional approach with other cities and towns, there's no way we're building a firewall that only Somerville is going to be immune from that. And this is the same conversation we're having with all those other mayors in the greater Boston region, and it's having an impact on all of us. And that is one of the greatest crises right before us right now. We agree. So I'll tell you, we're doing a whole bunch of technical things, legislative reform, new programs, but even if we execute every single one of those perfectly, there's no way that the market force is going to raise home prices in Cambridge and Medford and even Malden, as you've seen, and continue in Boston, Arlington, and they're not going to touch Somerville. The greatest thing we can do right now in the region is to build that housing stock. And Somerville is meeting that goal. We're a city that actually believes in density. Density is good done right, but there are parts of Middlesex County, as soon as you leave the city, that have less density than North Dallas. But there's as a region, it really has to be a regional approach, and we're having that conversation. We need to have more action, and the state needs to play a more leading role in that. Listen.
Come up. Yes, no, it's fine. Thank you. Hi. I just wanted to remind you about.
I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Oh, I have to use Fergal's mic.
Oh, I have to use Fergal. Okay, I'll just be really loud. Oh, no. I don't have to be. Hi, and thank you for calling on me because I actually have to leave and I don't want to be rude. I wanted to remind you about the Count on Me campaign. The Count on Me campaign was a campaign in the 90s which united the city to some extent, and it could be a framework to build a sanctuary city movement on. It's like the ADL No Place for Hate. It's an explicit expression of municipal support for one another, and I just wanted to remind you about it. At the time of the Count on Me campaign, there were banners, people had bumper stickers on their cars, they wore buttons. It was a way of publicly expressing, I think, the values of a sanctuary city. So.
And for those who don't remember, again, during the wave of, we had a lot of immigration, and the latest wave of immigration, especially from Central America in the 80s and 90s, and then from conflicts we played a major role in, we saw we would call human rights crimes, anti-immigrant crimes, hate crimes in the city on a major uptick, and that sparked a lot of civic movement, grassroots movements. Ron mentioned a couple, and just mentioned that one. That's important. That's another one you should keep in mind. In the back, I don't know your name. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Hi, I'm Meredith. Did I just shout? Okay. Hi. I've been here 11 years. I love you, Somerville. I work at UMass Boston. I'm across the river. And part of what I wanted to ask about was going back to what you were saying about this great American complexity. And I think that our teachers and our law enforcement officers and our public servants are sort of, are the first responders in a sense. And so what I'm wondering is, each of us is in some ways vulnerable, and each of us is in some ways able to inflict harm. So how can we as a city help our first interactors, the people who are educating our children, the people who are answering our phones at City Hall, the people who are interacting with us to try to keep our communities safe? How can we train and support one another in the sort of sub-legal realm of interactions to double down on the values that you have been talking about?
Thanks. That's a good question. One of the things we're considering is how do we take a model that we used throughout the 90s, and Melissa was part of that and others, called the Conversations Project, where we had community-based focus group and literally conversations with people about their immigrant experience or their experience on race and so forth. We just did another round of it. We reignited that recently as a result of the city trying to be part of national conversation to understand whether or not institutional racism exists in our public institutions and our agencies and the way we execute programs. We got a lot of public conversation and feedback on some of the things the city can be doing more to reaffirm our values. So that, what you mentioned, it could be a good opportunity there is one idea to expand that conversations, because we're talking about, and we have done it in schools, to have that conversation, not with first responders, with our teachers, with our students, but the greater community as a whole. And I think conversations are very powerful. You know, I was part of one of the circle focus groups, and when you hear someone's experience, it can be very inspiring and also very humbling. You know, when they express that their experience here is positive, they feel safe, or maybe they're expressing to you or to us that their experience was negative based on their interaction with a certain agency in the city, and they have a different perception than you and I of some of them, and that's humbling, but it certainly causes a certain level of disequilibrium that causes us to do work. So I think that type of conversation might be a good starting point, and we're going to be looking for ideas from the communities. You know, how can we engage in that greater dialogue to move forward? See, how are you?
Hi, first I want to say that thank you very much to all your support. My friends, immigrants, they couldn't come here because, as you know, they are afraid, but they do have many questions. The question that I have for you is that I have seen and I have lived the New Bedford raids, and also I have lived the raid that happened here in Somerville. And based on that, I have seen that I know for experience that when ICE comes, they don't knock any of your doors or they don't call you. They come suddenly, and maybe, I'm not sure, they have the support of the police department. My question is, how is the chief police from Somerville here in the city? Does he agree to support you? Is he totally pro-immigrants? Just, I would like to have his opinion or what he feels or how he's thinking. And at the same time, it's nice to see that there are many faces that are helping and supporting us, but how do we recognize you? Let's say I am an immigrant, I'm scared, I don't have documents, and ICE or whoever is treating me, that is going to call immigration. Who do I go? How do I go? Which door do I knock? And that's something that we need to work on it, because I would like us, for me personally or somebody else who is in that position, to be able to go and knock a door or say, hey, you are my ally and I need help, I need your support, how can you help me? And how can we work together to go to that, to make that happen?
Good to see you. Thank you, and thank all your friends for their courage. So those are some questions about what can we do? What do we need to do? How do we prepare? And as I talked about earlier, we're having conversations with the community And we're going to expand those conversations about what do we need to do as a community to educate people, to be prepared, to have that, to understand what our rights are, to understand who do we call, and address any concern. As to the police chief, looking at this meeting tonight, I wish he was here with me because I'd rather he speak for himself, but I'm going to do it. David Fallon was nominated as a champion of change to the White House because I believe, and the community believes, he's a model of progressive leadership and compassionate policing and law enforcement. And what he has done is put forth incredible efforts to engage everyone in the population, especially our immigrant population. And when I went to the State House to testify that the Trust Act should be state law, the chief was side by side with me as a law enforcement leader saying this needs to happen, that we will be safer as communities. This promotes a safe, healthy, happy community, that we need everyone's engagement to solve any issues we have in our cities and towns. So he is a champion and a partner with us in this challenge. I promise you that. You brought up a good story, which was a sad one, what happened in New Bedford, a little bit more than 10 years ago, if I remember, one of the raids on that factory, and it was a blind raid, and people were broken apart from families. It was very sad. It really accomplished nothing. Didn't promote any safety in the community, didn't accomplish any economic goal. It just drove a wedge into the valley of distrust between immigrants and our communities and law enforcement. And even still today, people talk, and how many years ago was that? It was more than 10 years ago, but that was such a negative, powerful incident. People bring it up all the time, because we remember those faces of those families, the terrified look on our neighbors and our friends. So our police department, this is important to know when you have a conversation with people and they try to explain the lie that, well, we just let criminals walk in our street and people get a free pass or something. That is not true. If you commit a crime and if you committed a violent act, a felony, as described in our local Trust Act, we work with law enforcement to remove that person. But we're not going to be part of any blind raids here. We're not going to be part of rousing people. Now, one of the things we have done that's been beneficial, and ICE and the other agencies, since we've taken our new approach on our stance as a sanctuary city, has been more cooperative with us. We actually assigned an officer to them, so we get an exchange of information. We understand what they're doing, and it's been informative. When they've been targeting a certain individual who's a violent person, we have that information in advance. We work with them to remove that person. We get to educate and talk to the public about why this person had to be removed or why there was a warrant, so there's not a lot of hysteria in the air, because there are always questions. I don't know how that's going to change with the new administration, and if the president-elect expects to hire all these ICE officers and what they think they're going to do. From our feedback so far, we have a great relationship with our federal agencies, and they understand what we're trying to accomplish in the community, and there's a mutual respect, and we're going to keep an eye on that. I promise you that we will take no part of breaking up families, rousing people from their homes. We're not going to do that. And I won't speak for Chief Fallon, but I'll tell you, those will be his words. Those will be his words. Yes?
Can I just wanted, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but based on this discussion right now, one of the committees I happen to be assigned to is Public Health and Safety from the Board of Aldermen. We met tonight. I just came from there to get here. Who was in attendance at our meeting this evening happened to be Chief Fallon. Happened to be Chief Fallon from the Police Department. And he offered information to the Public Health and Public Safety Committee, which will be reported out by Alderman Conley, who chairs this committee. But what he offered to us is, and I believe it was either yesterday, but I think it was this morning, he held meeting at his office with various immigrant groups and various leaders in the city, working together to brainstorm about what they can do to make sure that they outreach to all the proper groups citywide and beyond, so that they understand there's a safety net here, that they understand, you could have been here tonight. I heard it from him this evening, and they have already had multiple meetings, the most recent of which I believe was this morning. So the mayor speaks accurately when he says that the chief of police is working very aggressively on this matter, especially in light of the recent election. I just wanted to offer that information to you all.
That's Alderman Rosetti. Thank you. I do want to talk about what in terms of the recent election, and we do this obviously because we are uncertain about what the future holds, and we want to be prepared to be out in front and do everything we can to protect our families. But it's also created more distrust in our immigrant communities. Despite the good work we've done in the last several years, just the negative rhetoric and the results of this election have caused people to say, maybe I'm not coming up to this meeting tonight. Maybe I can't trust the mayor or the police chief or my elected officials. I mean, that's understandable. It's sad to think of, but so we're going to put in, and I think Alderman Rosetti for bringing that up. The chief and his team and the offices do incredible work in the city. You know, a department that stands for putting a Black Lives Matter banner on City Hall and promoting the trust fund. And it stands up with their fellow law enforcement leaders around the state and country and say, this is important for all of us. And I have the greatest admiration for them, but that's why we're doing the extra work, because now we got extra work to do now, just to rebuild some of the trust we may have lost in the last few weeks. Yes. Good evening.
I'm just hearing a note of asking and expecting a lot of trust. And I think in many ways, it was a chilling moment when I heard you imagine that you would need to adopt a child, because at any point that parents are separated from their kids, that means we didn't stand up and stop it. So I don't want to make it sound as though it can happen without us all literally participating and letting it happen. So I would never ask anybody to feel, when I give them a hug, that they should feel reassured that I think they're going to be okay, because we have to prove that. And I'm not hearing anything actively telling me that we're going to prove that, like being very proactive in stopping any effort to remove somebody from their home. So I want to know my rights as a Somervillian, and I love you, Mayor Joe. I want to know my rights as a civilian to stop the police from taking someone away, and what my protections are going to be when I stop the police from taking a neighbor away. And what are our plans for making sure that we have recourse as citizens to be in the streets stopping it when our neighbors' kids are taken away?
Thank you. I'm going to go back to what I mentioned earlier, Ron Heifetz kind of challenging us to remember our leadership responsibilities and being ethical and honest when we talk to people, what we expect to happen and what we can and can't do, and preparing people for what might be unthinkable that could happen. So what can we do legally? Well, we're trying to understand all that now and be honest with residents, saying, well, yeah, you can stop or you can't stop. If ICE has a warrant, here's what can happen, can't happen, and what are the resources necessary. But you know, Heifetz said to us, you know, well, what happens if they deport people? What are you telling them? A couple of us said, well, that ain't gonna happen. Well, how are you leading if you're not being honest with those people, saying, yeah, you can be deported? And that, I think, garnered a lot of silence. And what do we tell people? I'm happy to tell this. I'll stand in front. I'll be arrested for you. I will take anybody into my home. I'm sure many people here do that also. At some point, what else are we capable of doing legally and so forth? And so I think we have to approach this somehow ethically.